Hello and welcome. Today we'll be going through the next part of our videos addressing how to make a main menu. We're going to be setting this up because we're going to have a testing environment to test components of our next game. And so for us to be able to prepare for this, let's go ahead and create two new rooms and update what our current rooming naming convention is. So right now our starting room is the environment that we've been playing around in so far. I'm going to end up renaming this to be room_testing. This will be our testing room for us to play around with different things. I will have that there. I'm going to go ahead and create two more rooms. Make another room. This will be room_menu. And one more room. This one I'm going to actually duplicate my testing room and rename it to room level 1. And so now we have our level 1 room, our main menu room, and our testing room. I'm going to go click this so that way I can swap over my main menu room to be the primary room for our operations. Whenever the game starts, we want them to be at the main menu room, and then we'll later direct them either to the testing environment or our level 1 room. With this, let's go ahead and jump into, let's see, our level 1 room is just a duplicate of our testing room, but the main menu room is going to be different. For right now, I'm not going to be too creative with this. I'm going to go into the backgrounds. I'm just going to change this color to be yellow. That's kind of bright. There, that'll work. Just so we have something distinct here. And then in my level 1 room, just to differentiate it from my other room, I'm going to make this, let's see, this gray color. And maybe darken it a bit. Maybe make it white. Now, a kind of dark red. There we go, like a maroonish burgundy. I'm not good with colors, so just a red color. I'm just making this so that way it differentiates our testing room, our level 1 room, and our main menu. Just as a quick glance, you of course will go in and actually make it look nice. I'll update this at some point in the future, but this will just serve as a placeholder. So now we have 3 rooms. For my main menu, we're going to have a very simple keyboard controlled menu. And go ahead and right click, create an object. This object is going to be obj_menu. With this, I'm going to go ahead. It's not going to get a sprite. We don't need to worry about that. But I'm going to add 3 events. We're going to, of course, start with our create event. This will just initialize menu values. And this bit will be kind of long. Go ahead and maximize the screen, move that out of the way. There, we have a nice large view of just this room, or of this coding space. So we're going to first address a few basic values. The width of our little GUI, what we want our graphical user interface, our little menu to be. We're going to first figure out the space that we actually have to work with. And so we're going to get the overall GUI width for the screen that we're working with. We're going to do the same thing with GUI_height. And it's simply going to be display_get GUI height. That way we now have the height of our screen. So now we know how much space we have to work with. I'm going to make another variable called GUI margin. This will be equal to 32. This is just the value that I will use to reference my spacing away from other components. Space away from edges. Now that we've got that, I need to start putting values for my menu itself. So my menu's X value. Where do I want the X value to be? It'll be our GUI underscore width plus a value of 200. This is because we're going to have a little effect that'll have our menu move away from the edges towards the center. We need to make sure that we're able to start off of the screen and then move on to it. So that's why the plus 200. Otherwise, we're going to start right at the edge and then just move a little bit just to make it look fancy. I'm having to start off the screen, the plus 200, and we'll have a single line that'll address it moving onto the canvas where we want it to end at. And so similarly, how we have a menu X, we will have a menu underscore Y value. Our menu underscore Y value will be addressing the Y value where it starts, GUI underscore height minus GUI margin. And I want this to be just slightly higher. And I'll leave this be. We'll test around, see how it ends up looking. We've got width, we've got height. Now let's go ahead and add a target X value. So if we have a menu underscore X underscore target X value, we can specify this is where we want it to end at. This is where it starts off screen. And we're going to move it to GUI underscore width minus the margin. This will now have it shift over from our starting point, which is off screen, all the way over to where we want it to end at. Later on, we'll have an equation in the step event that actually gets us there. And so now that we know where we're going to stop the movement of the menu, at least in the X direction, the Y direction, I don't want it to move at. I'm happy with it being there. We now need to set the menu speed. How fast is this going to end up going? Menu speed is set equal to, we don't want to go in too fast. We don't want to go in too slow. It's up to you. I'm going to set it at 20. These are just values that we're going to use in the equation in the step event. Then we specify our font. Menu underscore font is going to be equal to a font that we're going to create. And so I'm going to right click, create, specify a font. Let's see what looks good. I think I'm going to go with, let's see, let's go down to the F. I was figuring out to do Franklin Gothic Heavy. There, that looks good. Increase the size. Now it's a little bit too big. Yeah, 24 looks okay. We can leave it at 24. Oh, and then let's go ahead and rename this. I'm going to call this font underscore menu. So this will be the font that we use for our menu and our menu alone. So jumping back into our create event, this is going to be equal to the font underscore menu. Okay, so now I have my specific font set for my menu. And then now I can go ahead and continue our mission, setting up the basic values for our menu. So after we've got the font, menu underscore item height, and this is going to be the spacing for each of our items. This is just going to be the font get size of our menu font. And this will make sure that we know how tall our text is, so that way we can space it out properly. Then we have menu underscore committed. This will keep track of where the cursor is in its final state before we jump into an action. And then finally, menu underscore control. This will represent whether the player has control over the menu. If the player can use the menu. With that, we now have two components, the final state and whether they have control. This will be important later on, since we know potentially the player can end up hitting stuff after they've committed on things. We just remove that option from them, and we also ensure that we grab whatever they've finalized their state. Now we're going to build our menu array. Here, we're just going to quickly have a menu specified at, I'm just going to have 2 options for the moment. And then an exit option as well. And so with 2, again, if we recall from our previous classes, our array has a starting index value of 0. Here, I'm going to reference index 2, so that means we have 3 items for this structure. And so my first thing is just going to be our start game. Then I'm going to have at the next index set equal to testing room. Then finally, our quit game. And so we have our 3 options. And then we can move forward into addressing the other values that we need. The menu underscore items. How many items do we have in here? This, rather than hard coding a value of 3, we're instead going to be using a value that is checking the length of our menu. So later on, if we expand this, maybe add an option spot or other components, we can not have to worry about updating this number as well. And so 1D, and so for one-dimensional array, what is the length of our menu? Then finally, where is our cursor currently set at? I'm just going to set it at 2, which will mean the cursor is going to be resting at, whenever we implement the rest of it, at this location, at start the game. We now have everything set up for our game at the moment, at least the initial values. Now that we have that, we're going to have to create 2 more events. The next one would be our draw GUI event. So this will be a new one, draw GUI. And this will address drawing the menu onto the canvas, onto our screen. Draw menu. Now let's go ahead and maximize this. And I don't need this at the moment. Now inside of here, we're going to have to do a couple of basic things. Start, specify what font we're going to be using. We're going to be using our menu font that we defined earlier and assigned to this variable. Then we need to draw underscore set horizontal alignment. And it's going to start based off of the right. Then draw underscore set vertical alignment, and this will reference it from the bottom. And so that way we can reference stuff based from the bottom right. This makes it easier for us to get our text to be drawn in the bottom right corner for our menu. Now, of course, you can mess around with this if you want to reference other locations. Again, your game, your choice. Play around with it and see what works best for you. Now we can do a for loop. For var I is equal to 0 while I is less than the number of menu items that we have, I plus plus. Now inside here, I'm going to go through the process of setting up how it gets drawn. So I'm going to have an offset variable that's just going to be temporary and our temporary text that we want to display. So our text is just equal to the menu at this location. What item is inside the menu at I? If the menu cursor is equal to the current item that we're cycling through, because we cycle through all of the items, in our case, all 3 choices. Well, the text is simply going to be equal to, we're going to update it. We're actually going to include string underscore insert. And I'm going to reference, in this case, I'm going to place at the front of the screen a little icon to represent what we're pointing at. So we know what option is highlighted, so to say. And a space. This will put that in front of our text. And so at index 0. And so this throws this inside of the text object that we pulled out at 0. So this just puts a little double arrows at what we're pointing at, just to make it look nice and pretty. And we're going to also change the color of this to be white. Then if it is not what we're currently selecting on where our menu cursor is going to be at, then our color value is going to instead be gray. So we don't have to worry about anything else. We now have those operations set up to cycle when either putting in this, the cursor item that we're selecting, or this to specify the colors. Now we need to figure out where it's going to go specifically. I'm going to make a variable and call this XX just for our convenience. It's going to be set to the menu's X value. We're also going to have a var YY. This is going to be set equal to menu underscore Y minus, and this will figure out our spacing for this. And so this is where we checked to know what is the item height. And we're going to put, we don't want them to be completely touching each other. And so rather than just multiplying by I, that would have them right next to each other. I'm going to do I times 1.25. So there's just a little bit of space between them, but not too much space. And then we can play around with this number and expand the spacing, but this is suitable for the moment. Now, we have these locations for the following purpose. Whenever I draw in my shadow, I'm going to add a shadow effect to make the text look a lot clearer. I first am going to draw underscore set color. And this is going to be the color black. Then I'm going to draw text. And I'm going to specify our X value minus offset. Offset was the value that we specified before. In this case, just 2 pixels. Then I'm going to specify my Y value, comma, YY. We're not going to modify the Y here. And then specify our text value is what we're going to draw in this location. We're actually going to copy and paste this over 3 additional times and modify the offset portion. So let's copy this, paste it here, here, and here. And instead of subtracting offset, I'm going to add offset. And for this bottom portion, instead of subtracting offset to the X value, I'm going to subtract it from the Y value. And let's place it over here. And we're going to add here, subtract there. And so this will simply get our text to look as if we've drawn the text essentially 4 times down below in black. It causes a slight shadow effect. This isn't the best way to do it, but in our case, since we only have a handful of options, it won't be too expensive of an operation to do to essentially draw extra text behind everything. And so now that we've drawn, in this case, like a shadow effect on the text, this of course goes behind. And now with the shadow in place, we need to actually draw our text itself, draw underscore set color, and let's go ahead and specify the color that we created or decided earlier. If it's the one we highlighted, it's white. Otherwise, it'll just be gray. Then draw underscore text, and we specify our XX value and our YY value and the text that we want to display in this location. So with this, we now have specifying our fonts. We're referencing from the right and the bottom for the horizontal and vertical alignments. Then we build out the entire menu and cycling through the options. We're either going to put 2 arrows next to an item and be white, or we're going to have the color gray. We then draw a shadow effect by essentially drawing the text in black, slightly shift it around it, then draw the text itself in the correct color, be it gray or white. And so assuming I have everything typed correctly, we can go ahead and test this and see what comes out of this. So it's building. Let's see. Oh, the most important part I forgot. Let's go back into our room for the menu and actually drag our object into here, into our instance layer. Because of course, if I don't actually have this object here, nothing's gonna happen. We're in an empty room actually. Okay, let's try this one more time with the object actually in our menu. And there we go, we see the text. It's slightly off the screen, again, because I had that plus 200 pushing us off. Just for our testing purposes at the moment, I'm gonna go ahead and comment out this bit just so we can see what it would look like by default before we do all of the updates and the step event. So it's quickly building. Now we can see here it is right at the edge. And so with it right at the edge, that is why we have the rest of the code and the margin to slowly push it over so that way it can nicely get displayed on the screen. Now, let's go ahead and put back in this plus 200 pixels and add in a step event. And so let's put a step event in step and specify here. This is going to handle our controls as well as getting the movement effect to be in place. And so this will be menu controls. Then we're going to go ahead and first have item moves into screen or into view. Menu underscore X is simply plus equals to menu underscore X underscore target minus menu underscore X divide by the menu speed. This will ensure that we move towards our target at the speed, and this equation just models that. We can quickly test it out just so we can see it. So let me go ahead and save this, run it. And so we're going to start off the screen, and this should slowly ease us into the position that we want it to be in, which we had set up with target X. And so there we go. We see it comes in, starts off of the screen, comes in and moves it over the 32 pixels in. And so it looks nice. Maybe the text is actually a little too close to each other. If you want to, of course, modify that. That is, sorry, not in the bullet, in our create event. Sorry, no, our draw GUI event, where I had 1.25. Let me change this to 1.75. And we can take a look at that after we get through and finish our step event. And so this moves us in. Let's go ahead and maximize this, clear off the rest of the screen. Again, I hit F12 to remove the other things that actually minimizes it, so that way it's not blocking our view. And we can go ahead and do our keyboard controls. And so we'll do our keyboard controls, spell that correctly, keyboard controls. And so if our menu control and inside here, so if the player does have control over the menu, then we check to see if they have in fact done keyboard underscore check underscore pressed. And if they press the virtual keyboard's up key, then we can go ahead and do something. In this case, our menu cursor is going to be increased by 1. So if they press the up arrow key, we're changing the number that they're assigned to. This will serve as the index. And then, of course, we don't want them to go past 2, since that's the highest index we have for our 3 options. Menu underscore cursor, if this goes, it is greater than menu underscore items, greater than or equal to, since technically there's three options here, we wanted to not go past 2. We can specify to set the menu cursor to be equal to 0. This will ensure that if they're at the top and they hit the up arrow key, it rolls over into the bottom. Now we're actually going to copy this and paste it for our down key and do a slight modification. Rather than plus plus, we're going to do minus minus. And then rather than if menu cursor is greater than or equal to menu items, it's going to be less than 0. If we go less than 0, well, we don't want it to be 0. We want it to be set back to the top. Well, the top is just menu items minus 1. So that way, if we do end up adding more items, we don't have to update this value. It'll just figure out, okay, how big is this? Oh, we've got 3 items. Okay, well, the highest number it can be is 3 minus 1, 2. So now the arrow keys will properly cycle through and work. We can test this out and see how that all interacts with each other. Once we have this confirmed that it's working, we just need to address how do they hit enter to cycle into their choices. Let's see, arrow key up, cycles through those options, arrow key down, cycles down through those options. It rolls over, and so everything looks to be working thus far. Now let's figure out, what do we do if the player has pressed enter? So keyboard underscore check, see if they have pressed the virtual keyboard and hit enter. If they have in fact hit enter, then we shall go ahead and menu underscore X target is now set equal to our GUI's width plus, I need to make sure to move it a little bit more, 250 to go off screen. Because as you noted, whenever we were at 200 and it started, you kind of saw the edge of it already in there with the 2 carets. Some of the first caret was already in view. So 250 to go completely off. And then we set menu underscore committed as the options they've selected is wherever our cursor is. And then does the player have control anymore? Nope, it is set equal to false. They cannot control the menu anymore. Now, once we have that portion in place, then we can go ahead and after this is determined, if the menu underscore X is greater than the GUI width plus 150, tells us it's at least moved part way off of the screen, mostly off the screen, but not all the way. And the menu underscore committed is not equal to -1. So that just confirms that they have in fact actually hit enter at some point, and that means they've selected an option. And so that means our option is not -1, it's whatever option they have selected. Then we are allowed to go in and do our next operation, which is actually moving us into the different rooms. We're actually going to use a switch case statement. So switch based off of the menu underscore committed. This will tell us what room they're supposed to end up going to. So in the case that they've hit 2, this will also serve as our default case. We're going to specify what room do they go to. And so room underscore go to, and in our case, I want them to go over to, let's see, here's the order 0, 1, 2. I want them from the menu to go into starting the game, which is level 1. So I want them to go to room 0, semicolon, and then break. That'll pop us out of this situation. Case 1, that would be our testing room. And so we're going to have us room go to and specify the testing room, which is in our case room 2, a semicolon and break. And then finally case 0, that's whenever they selected quit. And so it's just game underscore end and break. And so that ends our switch case statement inside this if statement. And so assuming everything's been typed correctly, we should be able to run this and do a small little demo of a cycling between rooms. And so there we go. It moves into the screen. I can cycle through them and I want to start the game. So I want to go into our, there we go, the testing room. Yes, we're actually in our testing room. I can jump around and I can clearly see that everything is going just as I expected. Let's see. Oh, sorry. We want to go to room 1, not 0, to go into starting the game. Because you see whenever I hit enter, it actually just brought us back to the menu. So start game, and there we go. Now we're in level 1. And so now that we've specified the rooms where we want to go, then we're good to continue our operations and mess around with the different activities we want to be doing. This now has a menu and lets us cycle between, I might as well just show off quitting the game, but allows us to cycle between our first level and then for our purposes, our testing rooms. That way we can ensure that everything is going according to plan. So if I hit quit, hit that and we exit. And so this addresses making a main menu, using arrow keys to cycle between our options and figuring out which rooms that you will end up jumping into. And so in here we can see room menu, level 1, our testing rooms are set there. And you need to make sure the menu room is the house. That is the screen that they start off whenever they play the game. And in my case, room 1 is our level 1 and room 2 is our testing room. And so with all of that out of the way, we now have a nice little menu that'll greet the player whenever they start up the game. Next time we'll be addressing melee combat and the time after that playing around inside of our testing room. But if you have any questions or need anything from me, just let me know. Otherwise, everyone have a good one and I will see y'all next time.